Now to our first topic of our discuss today. The issue of oil spillage in Nigeria seems to have assumed a legendary status without end in sight. Following failure of regulatory authorities to contain this challenge, since the 1970s, oil-rich Niger Delta region has accounted for an overwhelming majority of Nigeria's earnings, turning the country into Africa's largest oil producer. But the region continues to suffer the multiplier effect of decades of environmental degradation, which has eroded livelihoods and deprived residents of basic essentials such as access to clean drinking water due to oil spillages by oil firms operating in the region. Now, one cannot deny the impact of global warming, but the human contribution to this damage is evident, as millions of barrels have been spilled since oil was first discovered in 1956. However, stakeholders and industry experts have continued to query the role of government agencies that are supposed to monitor and supervise the operations who are not living up to their responsibilities. Well, to help me understand this better, talking about oil spillage and environmental degradation, focused on the Niger Delta region, joining me live via Zoom is an English-born Nigerian environmentalist and human rights activist, as well as founder and executive director of a non-governmental organization, Agape Birthrights, Mrs. Ann-Kio Briggs. Good afternoon, and it's good to see you, ma.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Yes, I wish you the same. Now, before I go into statistics of what has happened with regards to oil spills, number of spills being reported, take us through how this has been an experience of seeing this firsthand information of how the Niger Deltans have continued to cope despite being where the country generates large revenue, talking about crude oil sales.
Thank you. Quite honestly, looking at it or sharing with you, as a Niger Delta raised daughter, my experience of the oil spill will be the same experience of everyone, especially people that have been affected by the recklessness with which the oil companies, with their joint venture partner, the federal government of Nigeria, have conducted the oil exploration business. So my experience is based right from my childhood, from when the oil spill started. We started noticing the devastation along the mangroves, the swamps, how it affected our resources of how we make our living, our fishermen, what we eat, things like oysters, things like periwinkle, all these things were affected. So we noticed these things long before it was obvious that there was recklessness going on. And this has gone on for as long as oil exploration has been going on in the Niger Delta, which, as we're told, started in 1958. The first lifting of crude oil. So if you have those figures in mind, and then you begin to imagine how a people can suffer nearly over 60 years of this type of environmental genocide on our livelihood, on our lives, the fact that our people don't live long as the oil is because of the devastation that we have to live with. Gas flaring, we breathe it, we drink it, we use it to cook, we use it to wash. Our people definitely have suffered this devastation. I can't begin to express it. What you see on the photographs that you do show occasionally shows very clearly what the people are suffering. I grew up drinking from a well in my grandfather's compound. Now that well is still there today, but we cannot drink the water from that well. If you put your bucket in and bring water out, you can actually see oil glistering on it. Now that's not just my special story. That's the story of everyone. Now, the responsibility and the pain that we suffer Who is responsible is the question. Of course, it's the federal government, it's the oil companies, the international oil companies. But today, we have indigenous oil companies, especially like taking people like Oando. You take the recent spill in Nembe. These are owned by indigenous companies. Indigenous companies mean Nigerian companies. Some of them are from the north, some of them are from the southwest. I think this is the Aito company is probably the first one I am aware of, apart from the Obi Briggs oil exploration that is more or less very much offshore. So the devastation and the pain that goes with the devastation and the absolute neglect of government and the failure of people like Nostra and the failure of people like NEMA to step up when there is an oil spill. I have been told in the past, when NEMA first started, that oil spills are not considered a national emergency. I was told that as far back as 2001, 2002. And so it is not considered a national emergency. And that's why you hear people say, bring relief, because nobody sees it as an emergency. There is no medical intervention. So neither the government or the state governments in the states where these spills occur, like in Bayelsa, Delta, Rivers State, you see that even the government does not have a medical statistics, a medicinal statistics of what is happening to the people. The NDDC that is supposed to be part of the process of easing the pain of the people of the Niger Delta when it comes to development, has also not lived up to its expectation. In my opinion, they should be involved. The money that is supposedly the federal government is supposed to be pumping in there, these are the emergency things, the stopgap that these agencies are supposed to be. We're also very much aware now, and we're gathering information to be able to prove that definitely people like Nostra, the oil companies, are highly involved in what they call sabotage. They instigate it in most cases, and they pay for it to be carried out in other cases. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's wicked. It's evil for people to be doing that. But sadly, our own people are also part of the process that is doing this. Whether they do it because they are ignorant, or they do it because they are hungry, or they do it because they don't care, is what compounds my feeling on it.
Well, good insight into that, brilliant insight into that. And of course, environmental degradation has eroded livelihoods, and residents, we know what they've been going through. But I want to ask this question this way, maybe as a layman, let me put it to you this way. Many believe that some of these IOCs come up with reports and say some payments are being made for maybe compensation or for cleanups. What's really happening with regards to this? Because when those kind of things happen, we later still see protests, maybe at the IOCs, at the companies and all of that. So what is really happening? Are the IOCs not coming up or living up to expectations at all?
The international oil companies, that is the IOCs, have never, in my experience, and my experience is very personal. I don't read it. I experience it. I live it. In my experience, the oil companies have always been very brush off about the people of the Niger Delta, the people whose land they devastate. And sadly, they know what they are doing, because they can't do, there's no other place in the world where these oil companies do what they do in the Niger Delta. They don't do it anywhere else. Venezuela has oil, Dubai has oil, Saudi Arabia has oil, where Iraq has oil, Iran. What will I and what will I leave out? Do they do these things there? No, they don't. Now, I keep asking myself, why do they do these things in the Niger Delta? They do it, first of all, they can get away with it because of our system is neglectful. The government is neglectful of the pain and suffering of the Niger Delta people. And the government is irresponsible to its responsibility. The government is a 60% shareholder in all the ventures to do with oil and gas. And all the devastation of the oil and gas, the pain and the suffering, we suffer it all by ourselves. Nobody helps us out. And yet, the benefit of all this suffering that we take on is most of the benefit goes to other places. For instance, now, when you look at the sharing formula, sharing allocation, now, allocation is shared by one local government and by two by state. Now, you have Bayelsa that has 8 local government areas. You have River State, where I come from, that has 23 local government areas. Now, when they share by allocation to local government areas, Bayelsa, that produces about almost 30% of the total output of the oil from the Niger Delta, Bayelsa gets only 8 of the local government allocation. Kano, that does not produce any oil and gas, gets 44. In total, the North gets 419 local government allocation every month from oil and gas, and get 19, 19 states allocation every month by states. We that produce it, we get allocation by 13% to whatever is coming from the states, and whatever the government says that they have sold is what we are getting. So, and it rolls in that way. So you look at it and then you just see the injustice. So basically, therefore, the bitterness, the anger, the frustration that kicked off the Niger Delta agitation, that brought the output of oil and down to almost 700,000 barrels during Obasanjo and Yar'Adua's time, and then, of course, during the agitation by Adakaboro, where he had a 12-day war. It is still about the injustice of exploration of oil and gas. The same thing with Ken Sarawiwa. His the Ogoni movement was based around the injustice and the resistance to the injustice that the Ogonis felt at that time. Now, so many years on, Ogoni, even the so-called cleanup that is supposed to start in Ogoni, because the Niger Delta area has to be cleaned up, not just Bayelsa or Ogoni or Rivers or whatever, the whole Niger Delta. And internationally, it has been accepted that the damage which has been done by this wicked exploration of oil and gas in the Niger Delta, and bearing in mind that the Niger Delta is a very large delta area in Africa, and the fauna and the sauna and everything to do with the ocean is destroyed, and the forest and all of that. We bear the brunt of it, and yet no matter what, when judgments are given, like they are given abroad in America, in Netherlands, in the UK and all of that, the oil companies will drag their feet. They will create divide and rule, and at the end of the day, the money that is so-called compensation is not even seen, because it comes in bits and pieces, and it is just unbelievable what the Niger Delta people have had to endure. And yet when we speak about the pain we experience because people are the federal government is taking our oil and gas, you now find us in a situation where we found ourselves on the 13th of December, where the former president was verbally attacking the people of the Niger Delta in a meeting where I was also present by Zoom, and directly attacking the secretary of the Ijaw National Congress. So basically, therefore, it just boils down to, it doesn't matter who is in power. Doesn't matter whether it's Obasanjo, whether it's Jonathan, whether it's Buhari. The system, the policies that run the system of government in Nigeria is not favorable to the Niger Delta people that own this oil, whether whatever else the Constitution says, or whatever the Land Use Act and the Petroleum Act and all of those things say. The truth of the matter is, by law of reasoning, even what is found on your land belongs to you. It has to belong to you. So the only way the federal government could have taken it was by creating these laws and these bills under the military and bringing it into the dispensation of 1999 and putting it in the Constitution and carrying on. So people like NASDRA and whatever agency is set up to deceive the Niger Delta people, that somehow these agencies are there to make things easier and to hold people accountable for the devastation. Nobody is held accountable for this devastation. Even the oil, the coal fire, the soot issue that we're suffering right now, majorly in Rivers State. We've said it over and over again, that the military that is supposedly the people that are supposed to protect these wellheads and all of that, are part of this illegal business of coal fire. Whether they like it or not, that is just the truth. They are part of it, and they know they are part of it, and we know that they are part of it.
Now, almost finally, now I see we talked about laws, and I remember the PIA and all of the ups and downs that we had finally before it was passed into law. It's a 2-in-1 question. I'd like you to react to that and what it holds for host communities and all. Then, the issue of local refining, do you think that they can be empowered, I mean, across the Niger Delta, or what do you think can be done to also, improve local refining one way or the other?
Let me quickly put it this way, because you see, you can only speak from a position of knowledge, a position of information that you can actually prove. Now, in the year 2012, I started a live radio program that is more or less still on now, but I started it 10 years ago. Now, that radio program was called Saving the Niger Delta with Ann-Kio Briggs. Now, one of the major thrusts at that time of this radio station campaign for the region of informing our people was the campaign that licenses, modular refinery licenses, should be given to the people of the Niger Delta, not local content. People will come from Abuja, people will come from Katsina and come and apply in Abuja for local refinery. No, it is meant to provide jobs and for people to create jobs for themselves in the Niger Delta with the resources that is in the Niger Delta. So what that campaign was set out to do was to show that if you give them license, you'll be able to control them. You'll be able to set up for them the rules and regulations, internationally accepted rules and regulations, in how you should refine crude oil. And so that you don't do it illegally and pour it into the water or the mangroves or the creeks. And so if you do it illegally, then you do it in a proper way, in a place where it is safe. Now, the government has refused to do that. Let me tell you quickly something. The product of kerosene, diesel, petrol. We that actually own the raw materials that make these things live in the creeks. And so we don't have access to petrol stations in the creeks. And so NNPC, under, I think, starting from Obasanjo and then ending up with Yaradua, accepted that they will have floating stations, floating filling stations. As I speak to you today, I know authoritatively that even though those floating stations were approved on paper, were supposedly set up and invested in on paper, there is no single floating station anywhere in the waters or the creeks of the Niger Delta, from Ondo to Delta to Bayelsa to Rivers State to Akwa Ibom. So now you ask yourself, if you go into the books of the NNPC, I bet you will find till today that there is someone or a group of companies that are collecting allocation for these floating stations, but they don't exist. And so when the people in Kola that supplies the crude oil, in Soku, when the people in Bayelsa, in Nembe need oil, petrol, and kerosene, where do they get it? They get it at double the price in the nearest city, because it has to get to them by boat. So what is the alternative? The alternative is what we have. Fire is the alternative. And so if they had given license to the people of the Niger Delta, not people from Katsina, not people from Adamawa, not people from Kano, people from the Niger Delta region, to have a license to generate this product, their own use, what they need for their own needs internally in the Niger Delta, we won't be in this mess. Now, does the government not know this? The government knows this. Is the government prepared to do that? No. That shows that the government doesn't care. Because if the government cares, one, it will create jobs. Two, it will be done legally. And three, it will help the people of the Niger Delta. But when you refuse to do it, people will still go about doing it, because you now say they are doing it illegally. So the point of it is that until the government, the federal government, who have claimed everything, take responsibility and allow justice to prevail by making these things available to the people of the Niger Delta, it's going to be very difficult to stop this illegal bullfire. That the way it is being done is what is illegal, not the idea that it should be done, but the way it is being done. And it's being done like that because the federal government wants it to be like that. Otherwise, it will not be the way that it is. So basically, the government just doesn't care and continues to support and encourage anything that will bring suffering to the Niger Delta people. People are dying from diseases that we don't even know how many people are dying from the cooking of coal fire. And the boys that are doing this, the men even, that are doing these things, are themselves very grave victims, because they are the first point of contact of the pollution, because they are right there cooking this coal fire. So they are dying in their hundreds from this coal fire. But now, how do we get them to stop this coal fire? Just by saying it is illegal. Yes, it is illegal. It is destroying the environment. Yes, it is. It is killing us. I live in Port Harcourt. Every place in my house is full of soot. If you drop a drop of water, you will just see the soot catch it, because it's in the air. So this is what we're suffering. It's in my lungs. I've had tests done on me when I have traveled, and it's very clear that I have it in my, if I have it in my lungs and I have AC in my house, you can imagine what my grand aunt in the village will have in her lungs. She doesn't have AC in Abonima. I have AC in Port Harcourt. So the point I'm trying to make is that the government is aware of the disaster that is happening in the Niger Delta, but maybe it's also a way of decimating the numbers of the Niger Delta people.
It's a good way to leave it. Interesting chat with you. I must really appreciate this. I've been speaking to Mrs. Ann-Kio Briggs, the environmentalist and human rights activist. I thank you.
Miss, I'm not Mrs.
Okay. Miss Ann-Kio Briggs. Thank you so much for your time. Interesting chat with you, I must say. Founder, Executive Director, NGO Agape Birthrights. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we hope to have you on the show shortly to talk more about this.
Thank you very much. It will be a pleasure. Thank you.
All right then.